Hi, my name is Mona, and I have had some of the most stressful months of my life recently. It all started when I had to go on my maternity leave early. My pregnancy was very difficult, and my doctor ordered me to go on my leave early to avoid harming either myself or my baby. As soon as my mother heard about this, she came rushing over and helped my husband Tyron and I. She made us dinner and cleaned our house while also helping to take me to appointments. However, as I was nearing my due date, my mother broke her leg and was unable to help anymore. This was entirely understandable, of course, and we thanked her for all the hard work that she had done for us. We knew that it would be a huge challenge once the baby was born, and Tyron was worried that it would be too much for me to handle alone, and so he invited his mother to come and stay with us for a couple months. I was reluctant as I never had gotten along well with his mother. It had always just felt a bit awkward between us, but I also knew that I would need the help, and so I agreed. A week after I had given birth to my beautiful baby girl, Paige, my mother-in-law moved in. For the first few days, my mother-in-law, Karen, helped out, although I barely saw her. I was so tired and sore that I didn't register anything other than my baby girl. Between feeding her and trying to get rest and recover, I barely noticed anything else. But after a week, I began to feel like myself again. I still wasn't getting a lot of sleep, but I was in less pain. It was then that I noticed how many dirty dishes were in the sink and how filthy the house had gotten in just 1 week. Part of me wanted to ask Tyrone what had happened and why he and his mother hadn't been cleaning, but I just decided that all of us had taken a week off of doing chores so that we could focus all of our energy onto the new addition to the family. Since I had more energy, I began to tidy up when my mother-in-law came into the living room. "Oh, hello there, Karen. How's your day going?"
Oh, it's okay. I was just on my way to get something from the fridge.
I was a bit confused why she didn't offer to help me tidy up. After all, that was one of the main reasons that she was here. I needed her to help do the little things while I recovered and took care of my daughter. Sighing, I kept cleaning up while my mother-in-law went to the kitchen. As she passed me, I nearly gagged as I caught a whiff of her. She smelled worse than a dumpster. I couldn't believe how bad she smelled, and then I noticed how dirty her clothes were as well. As much as I wanted to ask if she was okay, I just made a mental note to speak to Tyrone and have him say something to her, as I knew that it would be easier to hear any kind of negativity from him, more so than from me. However, by the time that Tyrone had come home from work, I was so tired from cleaning and feeding our daughter that I decided to hold off on saying anything. A few weeks passed, and Paige was still feeding at all hours of the day. I felt exhausted, and so I asked if Karen could watch Paige while I took a nap. "Karen, I hate to ask, but could you watch Paige for a few hours? I'm so exhausted and I need a nap to recharge my batteries."
Well, I guess so.
She didn't really seem all that willing to help me, but I was so tired that I just slumped onto the couch and fell asleep instantly. I woke up a couple of hours later as I heard Karen coming into the house. She was pushing Paige in a stroller, and Paige was only wearing her pajamas. Now, this wouldn't have been a problem, but it was snowing outside, and I could tell that Paige was shivering. "Karen, what did you do?" I ran over and scooped my daughter up into my arms and cradled her into my body to warm her up.
What do you mean? I took her for a walk so you could sleep. I thought I was doing you a favor. How?
Yes, and I'm grateful that you took her out for a walk. But why didn't you bundle her up? It's freezing outside and she's only wearing thin pajamas. She also smelled terrible and clearly had a dirty diaper, but that was less of a worry at that moment. Angrily, I took Paige to the bathroom and gave her a warm bath to clean and warm her up. That night when Tyrone came home, I confronted him about his mother. "Hey, Tyrone, listen, your mother moved in to help us with the baby for a short period of time, and I'm still waiting for her to actually help out."
What do you mean? My mother said that she took Paige for a walk today?
She did, but she also took her for an hour-long walk while it was snowing, and our daughter only had thin pajamas on.
She did what?
Yes, in the freezing cold. Paige was frozen solid when she got home. And I didn't want to say anything, but your mother always smells terrible. I'm not sure that she ever bathes.
I know what you mean, but I haven't figured out a way to say it without hurting her feelings. Listen, tomorrow you have a follow-up appointment with the doctor. Have my mother watch Paige while you go. Let's give her another chance.
I really didn't want to, but I had no choice. My own mother still hadn't fully recovered, and we didn't have the money to hire someone to come into the house and help me out. Reluctantly, I left Karen in charge and went to my appointment. When I got home, that's when things went very sour. The smell of something burning was coming from the kitchen, and my mother-in-law was laying down on the couch watching TikTok on her phone. I was about to say something when I heard Paige crying upstairs and then ran up to check on her. Her face was red and she was once again in a dirty diaper. After changing her, I went downstairs and checked the kitchen. On the stove was some burnt food. I then checked the fridge and saw that the formula that I had left there for her was unused. Karen not only had ignored her for who knows how long, but hadn't even fed her. That was the last straw. I had only been gone for 5 hours and Karen couldn't even be bothered to help out even a little bit. That night, I asked my husband if his mother had any friends and if I could have their numbers. At first, he was a bit confused, but I told him that her birthday was a few weeks away and that I wanted to organize something for her. Once I had their contact information, I set about arranging for a few of them to come over in a few days. On the birthday day that the friends were to come over, I told my mother-in-law that I needed her to go to the corner store and grab me a few things. She, of course, didn't want to go, but after I gave her $100 and told her that she could use whatever money was left over to buy snacks for herself, then she rushed out of the house. While she was gone, her friends arrived, and I escorted them to her bedroom where the worst of the mess was located, and I told them to wait in her room and that she would be back in a few minutes before we can start celebrating. When she finally came home, she was mortified to see her friends standing in her bedroom. She could tell that they were all disgusted by the mess around them, and the smell was horrible. Karen tried to scream at me, but she was so embarrassed that she just ran out of the house in anger. Once she was gone, I apologized to the women and escorted them out of the house and then waited for Tyrone to come home. Once he did, I told him everything that I had done and why, and while he was a bit upset with me, he was more terrified at what his mother had done. Leaving a baby alone for hours without feeding them and in a dirty diaper was neglectful. The two of us waited for her to finally come back, and when she did, we had a big fight.
Dare you embarrass me like that?
After what you did, something needed to be done to put you in your place. Paige could have had an accident, and you wouldn't have noticed because you were too busy playing on your phone.
Listen, Mom. Mona is right. You were supposed to come here and help us with Paige, and instead all you do is make a mess and lounge around the house. Every time we've asked you to help, you have let us down.
You can't speak to me that way. I'm your mother, and I can make my own choices what I want to do.
Yes, you can. But this is our house, and you can't live here anymore. If you want to live like a pig, then feel free to do it somewhere else. Because you are no longer welcome here anymore.
Karen looked as if she was about to explode. Her face was so red.
Fine, I'll just go live in a home, seeing as how I'm not wanted here.
The next week she moved out and we found an old, aged home for her to live in. I did feel a bit guilty for embarrassing her, but I also knew that if I had just accused her of being neglectful, that she would have just brushed off my comment, and I needed her to face some kind of punishment for what she did. After she left, my mother was able to begin helping again as her leg had healed, and she was eager to lend a hand. As for Karen, I did manage to get one last bit of revenge on her. I filled out the paperwork for the old age home that she was living in, and I told them that she was severely senile and incapable of cleaning herself. As a result, she is not allowed to leave the property, which means she can no longer get her favorite snacks anymore, as neither my husband nor I will bring her any. On top of that, a support worker bathes her every day, so at least she no longer smells like a dumpster. I know that she hates it there, but honestly, it's probably the best place for her. Thanks for watching. Please like the video so it can be recommended to others.
No, I don't. And I can't believe I couldn't see the real you until this moment. I'm sorry, but there is no way I would marry someone like you. Enraged, Michelle turned towards me and tried to kick my guide dog but slipped on her own dress and fell down the short flight of stairs that led up to the altar. So let me start off by saying that my name is Josh, and I haven't always had the easiest life. Thankfully, I was raised by some of the loveliest parents around. They have always been incredibly supportive. Even my brother Abe and I have an amazing relationship. The thing that has made my life challenging, though, was that I was in a terrible accident when I was younger. I was playing in an abandoned building when a canister of chemicals fell on me and damaged my eyes so much that I was left blind for the rest of my life. I have to admit that I found my new life terrifying, and I really didn't know how I could possibly live the rest of my life without my sight. It sent me into a deep depression, and it took me many years before I finally was able to dig my way out of all the self-pity and helplessness that I was feeling. Eventually, I did indeed find a way to live my life, and even found a way to actually be able to live my life to the fullest. To start with, I had to find something that I could do for a living, and Abe suggested that I start up a vlog. At first, it sounded silly, but I eventually came around to the idea and started one, and it has made all the difference in the world. I had never thought that people would want to watch me live my life, but that I could also make a career out of it. I use several apps to make it possible for me to interact with my audience. Apps that read out comments to me, as well as convert my speech to text for when I want to comment back. Plus, my parents and Abe all help me when I can't use such apps. You would be surprised how user-friendly technology has become to people like myself. As you might imagine, meeting people became quite difficult as well, but the more comfortable that I became with my disability, the more independent that I became. However, Abe didn't have that excuse. Abe was always a very charming and attractive man, but had bad luck when it came to picking women. He had a bad habit of dating women that were pretty but were awful people. He was such a good person and just couldn't see anything negative in other people. So when he called me up and told me that he had started dating someone, I was a bit skeptical. "Hey bro, how's life?" "Pretty good. How about yourself?" "Great actually. I met an amazing woman that I know that you and our parents will love." "Oh yeah, that's great. When do we get to meet her?" "Tonight actually." Considering his past relationships, I wasn't expecting much, but I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt. As I was dropped off by a cab, I was finishing up a live stream from the day. I had taken my seeing eye dog to the park and was telling people all about the program where I got her. It was important to me to bring awareness to the wonderful program that I got her from. As I was nearing the end of the stream, I got into a cab that would take me to my parents' house. The driver informed me that he had pulled up in front of the sidewalk that led to the front porch, and I paid him and stepped out. As I was leaving the car, I placed my walking stick down and started walking the front door, when my dog indicated that there was someone standing a few feet in front of me and that I should stop moving. I could hear her turn around and sigh heavily.
Oh, whoa there. Can't you see where you're going? You almost hit me with that stick of yours.
Unless my dog isn't doing her job right, I should be several feet away from you.
Oh, you're blind. That explains why you were heading to the wrong house.
I had a bad feeling in my stomach. Something told me that this woman was Abe's new girlfriend, and we were already off to a bad start. I quickly told my audience that I would be ending the stream for the day and turned off my phone.
Oh my god. Not only are you blind, but you're one of those so-called influencers too? Did you just say goodbye to the 3 people that follow you? It's no wonder that someone as poor as you would be trying to get sympathy from people in such a rich neighborhood as this.
I actually have over 2 million followers, and there were over 200 in that stream. But listen, I think we got off on the wrong foot.
Honestly, I don't care. You can just leave now, because when my boyfriend arrives, he's gonna kick your butt. So you better just move on. He's wealthy and belongs here, unlike you.
Just then, I heard Abe approaching. I knew it was him by the scent of his cologne. He always wore too much, and it was always the same brand. "Hey bro, looks like you already met the love of my life. Michelle, let me formally introduce you to my brother Josh. Josh, this is Michelle." "Yes, we met. Maybe we should just head inside and introduce her to our folks." Although I can't see, I'm pretty observant about the world, and I could feel the shift in the mood. Michelle had been taken by surprise, and Abe was oblivious to the tension that she had created. The silence spoke volumes. After a few awkward seconds, we went into the house. Our parents greeted us there, and things went fairly smoothly until dinner. I went to sit in my usual spot and found that my chair had been moved. As a blind person, having things in consistent locations makes my life a great deal easier. I had thought that my mother was in the room, but it turned out to be Michelle. "Hey, Mom, can you help me find my seat? I didn't realize that you had rearranged things for our guest."
Oh, am I in your spot? I wanted to sit next to Abe. I didn't know there was assigned seating.
Of course that's okay. I just need to know when things change so that I can adjust accordingly.
I'll try to keep that in mind. It must be nice for you to come over, eat good food every so often.
I'm actually a good cook.
Well, no, I meant that. It must be nice to visit. People are well off like your parents and Abe. Being poor makes it hard to eat healthy and good food.
Things were not getting any better, and I could sense that Michelle was less than impressed with me. Plus, I was very confused why she was convinced that I was poor and that Abe was wealthy. While Abe wasn't remotely poor, he barely made half of what I did with my vlog. It didn't matter though, so long as Abe was happy.
Does your dog have to be in here with us? I don't want dog hair in my food.
It's my seeing eye dog, so yes. I'm sorry if her presence bothers you, but I need her with me. After that, Abe and our parents joined us in the dining room, and we all sat down and ate our meals. I chose to stay silent about Michelle's behavior, as I just assumed that maybe it was her being nervous. But as the months ticked by, she continued to be very rude to me. It hurt me to continue to stay silent, but Abe was so happy, and I didn't want to do or say anything that might jeopardize his happiness. But then he announced that he had proposed to Michelle, and my heart sank. This awful person was now going to be a member of our family permanently. The day before the wedding, we all gathered at the church for the rehearsal, and Abe had asked me to be his best man, and of course I had accepted. However, Michelle had made an incredible fuss over it, so much so that I thought for certain that Abe would finally see her for the terrible person that she was.
Well, yeah, it's okay if Josh is your best man, but does he have to bring his dog down the aisle with him? Couldn't we just have the maid of honor show him the way?
Yes, but his dog is important. Without his dog, he has no way of navigating through the world. And if the maid of honor ever has to do something, he will be left without any guidance at all.
Except I don't want that animal in any of our wedding photos. It's bad enough that he'll be wearing sunglasses the whole time.
I could tell that Abe was bothered by this, and I did appreciate him sticking up for me. In the end, Michelle relented and allowed me to have my guide dog, although I didn't trust her, and sure enough the next day, I found out that I was right not to. As the ceremony began, I couldn't find my guide dog, no matter how much I called for her. However, the ceremony had to begin, and so I allowed the maid of honor to escort me. It was so jarring and worrying to stand up at the altar without my guide dog. I felt truly blind in that moment, and tried to hide my panic as best as I could. Abe squeezed my hand and held it in support of me. Suddenly though, my mother came up to me and handed me the leash to my dog. "Oh, thank you, Mom. Where was she? Is she okay?" I could tell by the tone in her voice that something was upsetting her. She did not sound happy at all.
We found her locked in a closet in Michelle's changing room.
But how did she get there?
Oh, I think we both know how.
She was right. There was no other way around it. Michelle had locked my guide dog in her changing room so that she couldn't be a part of the wedding. This was a step too far, and I wanted to say something, but I waited until just the right moment. The ceremony began, and Michelle came down the aisle to meet us at the front of the church. The priest then began to speak, and when he said that famous line, I jumped in and spoke my piece. "Should anyone present no of any reason that this couple should not be joined in holy matrimony, speak now, or forever hold your peace." I object. This woman is an absolute monster, and a gold digger as well. "Josh? What are you talking about?"
Oh, will you just shut up, you horrible cripple? You're ruining my wedding.
"No, Michelle! You ruined your own wedding by being a monster." "Abe, Michelle has had issues with me since we first met. My guide dog was found in her dressing room, locked in her closet. She purposefully tried to keep her away, despite the fact that I need her with me at all times." "Michelle, is this true?"
Well, I mean, you can't prove that it was me that put her in there.
Plus, she is only marrying you because she thinks you're rich.
What do you mean? He is rich, unlike you.
No, I'm not. I mean, I do okay for myself, but compared to Josh and my parents, I'm not rich at all.
Wait a minute. What are you saying? Are you saying that you don't have as much money as this blind idiot?
No, I don't. And I can't believe I couldn't see the real you until this moment. I'm sorry, but there is no way I would marry someone like you. Enraged, Michelle turned towards me and tried to kick my guide dog but slipped on her own dress and fell down the short flight of stairs that led up to the altar. I could hear her hit the bottom of the steps hard before she screamed in frustration and then ran out of the church. I counted my blessings that she hadn't successfully kicked my guide dog and that she had made a massive fool out of herself in the process. I felt so bad that I had ruined his wedding, but Abe assured me that I had done him a massive favor. As it turned out, Michelle was drowning in debt and had seen Abe as a way to escape that debt because she thought that he was rich and would pay for her to be debt-free and to have a lavish lifestyle. Had he married her, he would have been ruined financially. It was true that he made good money, but she owed more money than he could ever afford to pay off, and the minimum payments alone would have drained his bank account within a few months. Abe was so grateful that I had rescued him, but I felt angry at knowing that had things hadn't happened the way that they did, that he would have been completely ruined, and so I chose to do something that I normally wouldn't. Thankfully, Abe and Michelle had hired a videographer for the ceremony, and they had filmed the whole interaction. I managed to get a copy of the video, and I posted it to all of my social media accounts and put her on blast. The backlash against her was intense, but more than warranted. I begged my followers to not attack her, but to also not give her a chance to hurt anyone else. That anyone getting involved with her should know what kind of person that she actually was. As a result, I heard that she ended up losing her job as they saw the video and didn't want anything to do with someone that would attack a guide dog. I'm not sure what became of her, but the last I heard of her, she moved to another city and had even changed names. Honestly, she was just lucky that her kick missed though, as I would have pressed charges against her and ensured that she went to prison. Thankfully though, there is a happy ending to this story. Abe did eventually find someone that not only was a genuinely good person, but was a perfect fit for our family. In fact, she was the woman that had trained my guide dog. They truly do make the perfect couple, and knowing how happy they make each other has even made me wonder if I should begin trying to find someone to spend my life with as well. Perhaps I will. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe. Hello? I'm Aaron, and my story began when I was only 4. On a night when my mom made me pack a bag and put me in the car. They strapped me into a car seat with my teddy bear on my lap and my backpack by my feet. Mommy, what are we doing?
Shut up.
Daddy, what's wrong? Stop talking, Aaron. I felt so confused and scared, and I didn't understand what was going on. But I did know that my parents didn't like me much. However, my twin sister was perfect, pretty, and smart, in their eyes. I knew they liked her more. I couldn't help but resent her and them for it. We drove for hours, and I grew more and more scared. Eventually, I started to cry.
Shut up.
But I couldn't stop. I cried right up until we stopped, and I was picked up out of the car seat and left standing on the sidewalk outside of a vaguely familiar house. Mommy, what are we doing here? We? Nothing. But you? You're moving in. You'll never amount to anything, Aaron. We can't waste our time with you when your sister is the one who will make us money. And they climbed back into the car, laughing at me while I stood on the sidewalk crying. They drove away, and I didn't know what to do. I was tired, so I dragged my bag up to the house and curled into the porch swing and held my teddy tight. When I woke up, my aunt was crouched down beside me, and she had a hand on my shoulder.
Aaron, darling, are you okay?
No. Mommy and Daddy left me here.
I'm sorry, Aaron. They called me this morning and told me that they didn't want 2 children, only 1. And they said that your sister was a good business investment. But don't worry, I'll look after you. Come inside. Let's get you a nice hot bath and something to eat.
My aunt carried me inside, and that was the start of my new life. My aunt wasn't a wealthy woman, but she made enough for us. I went to school and studied hard, and I never forgot the feeling of being left behind. I never reached out to my parents, but I always figured that they would attempt to reconnect one day. But I wasn't going to hold my breath. Instead, I let my aunt become my entire family. She was my mom and my best friend. During the holidays, we would spend it with her friends and their children. I never wallowed in the pain of what my parents did. I went to counseling and wrote music to express myself. I wrote books and poems. I made myself a creative conduit for all the emotions I've ever had. I was a creator. One day, when I was 15, I was playing in a local bar for tips and free meals. The boss knew my aunt, and on the nights that she had late shifts, they invited me to play and gave me an empty booth at the back in which to eat and study. I had just finished my set to a rousing applause when someone I found vaguely familiar approached me. She was my age and had blonde hair and blue eyes, just like me.
Hi?
Hello?
I know who you are. Do you know who I am?
I have my suspicions.
I'm your twin sister.
I had assumed this would happen one day, but I expected my parents to be there too. Is it weird that I don't even remember your name?
Yes, it is. Didn't Auntie tell you about me?
She told me she hasn't seen you since they abandoned me.
Abandon is so dramatic.
And accurate. They left me in the street. They didn't even call my aunt until the next morning. They laughed while I stood on the sidewalk and cried.
So you remember a random night when you were 4 and not my name?
I remember the things that matter.
Then you better start remembering me. I've won so many medals and trophies in gymnastics that I'm basically famous. They're talking about sending me to the Olympics.
I couldn't understand what she wanted. Was she really here just to brag? What do you want?
I was just coming to see whether they made the right choice.
Well, consider me flattered that you found me enough of a threat that you had to come all the way down to see me in person. You can leave now.
I'm not here to flatter you. I just couldn't find you on the internet. Must be because you're such a nobody.
Not quite. I just changed my last name. She obviously hadn't considered this at all, and she started to scowl at me.
You know, there aren't any baby photos in the house because of you.
Sorry?
You should be. They basically started anew after they got rid of you, which means all my friends think I'm adopted because I can't show them baby photos because you were in all of them.
What do you want from me? I've done nothing wrong, and you're here to rub my nose in the fact that they kept you? If I had my way, I'd never hear from any of you again. Now please leave. If you don't, I'll have the bouncer show you out.
No, you wouldn't.
I stood up and waved my hand at the bouncer, Tommy. He was a big guy who I became friends with after he was assigned to watch over me the first few nights I was at the bar. He nodded and started walking towards me. Immediately, my sister's eyes went wide and she backed away.
Oh my God, fine. But just so you know, I'm glad my parents kicked you to the curb.
Feelings mutual. I'm blessed that I didn't have to grow up around someone so conceited and horrible. It felt like a fever dream the moment she left the bar. Tommy asked if I was okay, and I told him I was fine, but I was confused and a little hurt too. Why would she go so far out of her way to make me feel bad? When I got home that night, my aunt was still at work, and so I went to the couch and laid down. I tried watching some random videos on the internet, but although I wanted to drown out my thoughts, nothing seemed to work. Sometime in the early morning, my aunt woke me up.
Aaron, you shouldn't sleep on the sofa. It's not good for you, and you're too big for me to carry you upstairs.
Sorry.
Hey, what's wrong?
My twin came to the bar last night. I quickly explained what had happened, and my aunt grew angrier as I told her what happened.
My sister is the worst. She was always like that when we were younger. I'm better than you, so you're worthless. Mom loves me more because I got a better score on our science test. She harped on about it for ages. It really messed with me when I was younger.
That's why she left me with you? Because she thinks we're both worthless?
No matter what your mother believed, you are never worthless. It doesn't matter what you do, you're still worth something, and everyone is worthy of love.
My aunt was the best at making me feel better. So even with the stark reminder that one family had abandoned me, I still had a different one that never would. Oddly enough, it was the trauma from my past that I started to make a name for myself. I think it was partially because of how she bullied me about not being on the internet much, but I really wanted to prove her, and by extension my family, wrong. And so I uploaded some of my music to the internet. I put it on a niche site where people shared their music and stories with each other, but one of my songs was uploaded to a popular music sharing website, and it became a viral hit overnight. I woke up on a random Thursday to a million messages on my phone, and my aunt excitedly calling me downstairs. By this time, I was 20 and gangly. I had a mess of blonde hair and preferred to wear my high school basketball uniform on days when I didn't have to go to college. It was like this, fresh out of bed and confused as hell, that I met the CEO of the biggest record company in the country. Aaron, is it? Thank you for coming down to meet me. I'm the CEO of Rich Records, and this morning, my daughter came to me and begged me to listen to the new, biggest song in the world. At first, I was worried that our competition had started making waves, but I realized soon enough that you were unrepresented. So, I'm here to offer you representation. Do you have more songs? I stood there for a while with my mouth hanging open like an idiot.
Aaron has an entire library of music he's written. He's really very creative, always writing something. Books, poetry, music.
Seems you've got a lot of talent going on. We could use someone of your ability. It was too much too fast. I was overwhelmed. I had expected this to be a lazy day where I played video games with my friends and studied. I had not planned on being internationally famous on a fluke, but I had to take the bull by the horns. It would be an honor to work with your company, sir. That same day, the CEO took me and my aunt shopping to buy new clothes for a big meeting with his employees. Then, he flew us to the capital city in his private jet, where I met with his creative advisors, and we discussed the breadth of what I had to offer. By the end of the day, I had a record deal and had several tour dates booked. The single was released a week later, and it was the fastest-selling single in the whole history of the company. In no time at all, I was one of the richest musicians in the world, and my name was everywhere. Things were moving so quickly, and before I knew it, I was juggling school and performing at concert venues to massive crowds of adoring fans. I couldn't believe my good fortune. To show my appreciation to my aunt for all that she had done for me, I paid off her mortgage and gave her enough money so that she could retire and travel with me when I went on tour. I also put her in charge of managing my finances, as I knew that she was far more responsible with money than I was. While on tour, I happened to walk by a TV that was broadcasting sports news, and I heard my sister's name, which drew my attention. Apparently, there was a scandal involving her and a few of her teammates. All of them had been taking performance-enhancing drugs, and they had been caught. It didn't sound like they would face any legal repercussions. But she had been denied the ability to go to the Olympics, and her career as a gymnast was over. I couldn't help but chuckle when I heard that. She had been so proud of going to the Olympics, and now she had been caught cheating and would be lucky if she could get a job as a cleaning lady. Several months later, after my tour was finished, my aunt and I went home to relax for a bit before my next tour. As we approached my aunt's house, there sitting on the front porch were my parents and my twin sister. All three of them looked dirty and dressed in torn clothing. At first I wasn't sure it was them and thought that 3 homeless people had wandered onto my aunt's porch. But as we got closer, I realized who they were.
There you are. We've been waiting for days for you to come home.
For what? Why are you here?
Well, there was a bit of a misunderstanding and we're going through a bit of a rough patch. Just let us inside and we'll tell you how you can help. Excuse me, but we aren't inviting you monsters into our home. After what you did to Aaron all those years ago, you have some nerve. You're just lucky that we don't call the police and have you charged with trespassing.
How can you be so heartless? After I was caught with the steroids that Mom and Dad gave me, we lost everything. We couldn't pay our bills and ended up losing our house.
In other words, you were living outside of your means and the debt caught up to you then? Well, that really isn't our problem. You kicked us both out of the family years ago, and you don't have any right to come demanding for us to help you now that you're flat broke. I pulled out my cell phone and called the police, and they arrived a few minutes later. Thankfully, my parents and sister were distracted by talking to my aunt, and so they didn't notice until the police pulled up, and by then, it was too late. And they were loaded up into the squad cars and taken away. We later heard that when they were taken to the police station and were processed, that they found steroids on all 3 of them, and they were then arrested. It was quite the surprise, especially when they were put on trial, and between the Olympics scandal and being arrested with steroids on them. The judges in their cases weren't very lenient on them, and gave them each 10 years in prison. It felt rather fitting that we got to see karma in action, actually. My parents had abandoned me because they were convinced that my sister was the one that would make something out of herself. And yet I had been the one to strike it rich and famous. Although, I guess she did become famous as well, but for all the wrong reasons. There are times, though, that I wondered that if they hadn't abandoned me, if things would still have turned out the way that they did, and I honestly don't think that they would have. After all, my aunt had been the one to really make me believe in myself, and without her influence, I don't think I would be half the artist that I am today. So even though my parents hurt me more than anyone else on this planet ever could, they helped to ensure my future success by giving me to the one person that would love me more than anyone else in the world. Of course, When they do get out of prison, they'll be dirt poor and will probably come begging for money, and I'll just have to hire plenty of bodyguards to keep them away, even though I have them to thank for putting me where I needed to be in order to become successful. I still have no desire or need for toxic people like them in my life. Thanks for watching. He wasn't wrong, though. Our parents did indeed give him a lot of praise and attention, while they only ever yelled at me and even occasionally slapped me. Vincent, can't you do anything right? Why can't you be more like your older brother and get straight A's? I'm sorry, Dad, but I'm trying my best. And I do get good marks, just not as high as Scott's. Hi there, my name is Vincent, and my brother and I have always had a terrible rivalry. It wasn't something that we had chosen to engage in, really, but our parents pretty much encouraged it. Well, actually, they pretty much forced it upon us. They always considered my older brother Scott to be their golden child. After all, he got better grades than I did, and he was always better at sports as well. I truly did try, though, but no matter how much I studied or how hard I trained, I just couldn't compete with him. Not to mention, I knew that Scott would one day be given my father's company, and I would be expected to be one of his employees, which meant that I would always be his servant, and that terrified me. My father owned a company that manufactured car parts, and he would constantly tell Scott that he would one day be given the company. Poor stupid Vincent. Such a shame that you're too stupid. Will you stop rubbing it in? School isn't a contest. Oh, but that's where you're wrong. It's a contest for mom and dad's attention and love, and you're losing big time. Ha, I'm just surprised that they chose to keep you instead of abandoning you at the side of the road. But then again, who would be my slave once we were older if they did that? I can't wait to constantly make you do the dirtiest and most awful jobs at the factory. He wasn't wrong, though. Our parents did indeed give him a lot of praise and attention, while they only ever yelled at me and even occasionally slapped me. Vincent, can't you do anything right? Why can't you be more like your older brother and get straight A's? I'm sorry, Dad, but I'm trying my best. And I do get good marks, just not as high as Scott's.
Well, it isn't good enough. Every time you bring home these subpar grades, we get more and more disappointed in you.
It was so demoralizing, and their constant abuse was beginning to make me feel constantly afraid. Every time I would receive a mark that was less than an A, I knew that they would yell at me until I cried, and more than likely would slap me hard enough to split my lip, while Scott just would watch and laugh at my pain. It got so bad that the sound of my father's feet coming up the stairs of our house would put me into panic mode. I just couldn't take much more of it, and so on the day when I turned 18, I quickly packed my bags and left a note saying that I wouldn't live with them another minute and that I was leaving. An hour after I left the house, my phone rang, and it was my parents. What on earth do you think you are doing? Get back here right now. There's no way that I will. I'm done with putting up with your abuse, and having the only thing to look forward to is to put up with Scott's abuse for the rest of my life. I'm an adult now, and I don't know what I'll end up doing, but regardless of what it is, it will be far better than the future that you and Mom planned for me. And with that, I hung up. It was true that I didn't really have much of a plan, but I did know that anything would be better than living with those cruel people. After a few more hours, I began to get hungry, and so I wandered into a restaurant that specialized in noodles. And after enjoying a very delicious meal, I saw that they were hiring, and I asked the owner if I could apply. Please, sir, can I apply to work in your kitchen? You? You want to work here? Shouldn't you be going off to college at your age? I told him about my life and what I had done, and he was incredibly sympathetic. Oh wow, that's a pretty tragic story. I'll tell you what. There's a small bachelor's apartment above the restaurant that you can use, and I'll train you and teach you everything I know. But you have to work incredibly hard and show me that you deserve it. Do we have a deal? I of course agreed. Not only was this a way to make money, but it came with a place to stay as well. Over the next few weeks, Gordon taught me all of his recipes and even allowed me to experiment and come up with a few of my own, some of which began to attract more and more patrons to the restaurant. I had impressed Gordon with how quickly I was learning how to cook, and he was doubly impressed that my cooking skills were increasing his sales as well. So much so that he gave me a handsome raise and approached me with an idea. Hey, listen, You've done amazing things here, and in an incredibly short time too. What do you say about maybe expanding this business with me? What do you mean? Well, I own property on the other side of town, and I was wondering if you would run a noodle shop there, like a franchise. You would have to hire your own staff and train them, and I would definitely increase your salary. What do you think? It sounded like a great idea to me, so of course I agreed. The first few weeks were very stressful, but my staff and I began to work well together like a well-oiled machine, and before long, we were making massive profits. We were doing so well that Gordon came to me and asked if I thought that we should expand again. At first, I looked at him like he was crazy, but then I realized that it hadn't been that difficult to train the new staff and get them to a point where they were making money. Gordon, I think it's a crazy idea but a brilliant one too. I think we should definitely keep expanding, but I'll only do it on one condition. What's your condition? That we do it as partners. After seeing how well you got this location in Shapey, I think you have a deal. And just like that, we became business partners. Before long, we had over 20 restaurants all over the country, and were making plans to open new ones in the neighboring countries as well. As it turned out, my expertise was never in math or anything I learned in school, but in making good business relationships. I was good with people, and that made me a great businessman. After a few years, we had grown quite the empire, and it was at that time that I got a phone call from my brother. I had always suspected that my family might reach out one day, but definitely was not prepared for what he demanded of me. Hey doofus. So I've heard some good things about you. Hey Scott, what exactly do you want? Easy there, little man. I'm just calling to give you a great opportunity. How would you like to invest in Dad's company? Dad's company? What are you talking about? Dad and I heard that you came into a little bit of money, and we wanted to give you a chance of helping the family out. How does 20% of the company in exchange for $1 million sound? It sounded like a scam to me, but I wasn't going to let on that I smelled deceit. That sounds like a pretty great idea. Let me talk to my financial advisor and see how I can shift some money around. I'll call you in a few days, okay? The second after I hung up the phone, I began scouring the internet for information about my father's company, and what I found made me laugh. As it turned out, the factory had been understaffed because of poor management and had been producing poor quality parts. Because of this, they had been losing contracts, and the value of the company plummeted to less than $250,000. My brother and father were indeed trying to scam me, but I wasn't going to fall for their nonsense. With this evaluation in mind, I then called the bank where my father's business dealt with and inquired about the status of his company. They told me that my father was in serious trouble. He had gained a significant amount of debt as he had kept borrowing money to keep his business afloat, and that if he didn't pay the bank $250,000 by the end of the week, that the company would be sold off to cover his debts. Hearing this gave me an idea, and all I had to do was wait a few days. All that week, my brother and father kept calling me and leaving messages on my voicemail, demanding that I call them back immediately. Of course, I never did, until Saturday, that is. Hey Dad, it's been a while since we've spoken. How are you doing? Terrible. You missed the deadline, and now the company is in ruin. Are you happy? You ruined the family business. No, Dad. You and Scott ruined the family business. As of a couple hours ago. I saved the family business, but I did it for much less than what you have been demanding from me. What are you talking about? Well, it's really simple. I bought your company from the bank, which means I'm now your boss. And as my first act as your boss, both you and Scott are fired. Ha! You can't be serious. Oh, I very much am. In fact, security guards should be entering your office right now to escort you and Scott off of my property. Just then, I could hear a scuffle as security guards dragged my father and brother out of their office and out of the building. The sounds of their wailing as they were dragged away was music to my ears. Months later, I had been able to broker new contracts for the factory and had hired experts in the industry to fix the many issues that had plagued the company under my father's and brother's leadership. With some elbow grease and the skills I had learned working with Gordon, I was able to make the company profitable again. I still maintained my partnership with Gordon, of course, but I figured that it didn't hurt to diversify a bit. As for my parents and brother, after being kicked out of their company, they tried to sue me, but my lawyers made sure to tie them up in court until they ran out of money. Now the three of them work minimum wage jobs, and occasionally try to call me to yell at me for ruining their lives. The tragedy of it is that they, of course, did this to themselves, but are too stubborn to see it that way. So in the end, I got the last laugh. My parents had always treated me terribly and treated Scott like a winner, but in the end, I proved that they had backed the wrong son. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe. Quiet as a mouse, I snuck up behind them and hit them both as hard as I could in the knees, disabling them from being able to run away, and then called the police and reported them. Within minutes, the police came and threw the pair into the back of their squad car and hauled them off to jail. So I want to start off by saying that I'm a very forgiving person, but everyone has their limits. And I want you to tell me if I went a bit too far in the end. To start off with, my name is Brad, and I met my wife Kathy many years ago. We were the kind of couple that constantly had to hold hands and truly did love each other. We had 2 sons soon after we were married, and we were over the moon with how blessed we were. The only problem was that Kathy's family despised me. I knew that the only reason that they hated me was because I'm black. Unfortunately, although Kathy was very progressive, her family was incredibly racist and would often say cruel things to me. Our children, though, took after my wife and had very, very light skin. So much so that they merely looked like they were very tanned. I can recall my mother-in-law approaching my wife soon after my youngest son was born.
Oh, Kathy, why on earth are you married to that monkey? Thankfully, both of the children he gave you look like us, but what happens if you have a black baby next time? What will people think?
I can't believe how ignorant you are, Mom. If people think that my children are ugly because of the color of their skin, then those people can go to hell. I suggest that you grow up, or else I'll make sure that you never see your grandchildren again.
I felt so much pride for my wife in that moment, and a great deal of disgust for my mother-in-law. My children were beautiful, regardless of what color their skin was. To me, this didn't matter at all, as I loved them regardless. But this made my in-laws overlook their heritage a bit. Honestly, it was a mixed blessing since I wanted them to know their extended family. Even if they were toxic racist people, family was always important to me. However, the worst thing that could ever happen did, and I lost my wife to an illness. When we had found out that she was sick and that she wouldn't recover, we made plans for everything so that when the time came, that it was all prepared. I knew that I would be a complete wreck when she passed away, and that I would need things planned out ahead of time, or else nothing would get done. When the day finally came, my sons and I were devastated, but thanks to planning things out, we managed to make it through the funeral more or less whole and complete. Thanks to my wife's life insurance policy, everything was paid for, and my sons' financial futures were secure no matter what they would want to do. The one saving grace was that Kathy's family was on their best behavior, and for the first time since I've known them, they treated me with respect. I had honestly thought that they had changed, and was angry that it took the death of my wife for them to finally change for the better. But it didn't last very long. A week after we had buried my wife, my in-laws and I gathered at my lawyer's office to hear the reading of her will. I already knew what was going to be said, and so it was no surprise when the lawyer announced that all of Kathy's life insurance money would go towards our boys. We had talked long about that decision, and since I made more than enough money at my job, I saw no point in the money being given to me. After all, it would help to ensure that our sons would not only be able to pay for their education, but it would give them a solid boost when it came to starting their lives after they finished school as well. It was Kathy's final gift to our sons. However, this was a bit of a shock to my in-laws.
Are you serious? Do you mean to tell me that all that money is just going to this degenerate?
No, sir. Their joint finances are going to be kept by Brad, but the life insurance money will go to their sons. It will be held in trust by myself until they are 18, at which time it will be given to them in installments over the course of a few years. The only money that Brad is getting was already his to begin with.
But what about the custody of the boys?
Well, they will remain under the care of their father. I'm confused. Why would there be any question of what would happen to them?
They can't be raised by this man. They'll end up in a gang or selling drugs. That's all his kind are good for.
I knew that I shouldn't be surprised, but I was taken aback by their words. especially since they thought that just because my wife had died, that my own sons wouldn't remain mine. The lawyer immediately kicked them out of the meeting and apologized to me, even though he had done nothing wrong, and I hoped that that was the end of it, but it wasn't. 2 weeks later, 3 police officers showed up at my house, and they looked as though they were going to break in.
Are you Brad Cooper?
Yes, I am. Is everything okay?
We have reports that you're abusing your sons and forcing them to take drugs.
I'm sorry, but what? No, sir. I would never do that. I love my sons. May we come in and have a word with them? Yes, of course. Please come with me. You can ask them whatever you need to. I led them into my home and they interviewed the boys for hours. Afterwards, they apologized as they had been led to believe that I had been a violent man and that I had been hurting the boys, which couldn't be further from the truth. I then asked who had filed the report against me, and they said that it had been anonymous. Although I knew all too well who it had probably been, my in-laws had no doubt had a hand in this nonsense. A week later, the police were back. This time, they apologized for the inconvenience, but they had received another anonymous tip about me abusing my sons, and they needed to follow up on it for their report. I knew that they were only doing their jobs, and so I let them in again. And just as before, they were satisfied that it had been a false claim. Angrily, I asked how many times they would keep hearing these false claims before they began to investigate who was making them. My sons don't understand why they keep having to answer these questions. They're worried that they will say the wrong thing and that you'll take them away to prison. Can't you do something about these false allegations? I can assure you that it's my in-laws that are making them. They want custody of my sons for some reason.
Rest assured, sir, that we are indeed investigating who made them, and once we do, they will face justice.
I wanted to believe him, but I was convinced, and so I reached out to my former brother-in-law, Derek. Aside from my wife, he was the only other person on my wife's side of the family that was a good person and wasn't racist. We had always gotten along very well. Derek, they are tormenting my kids with all these false allegations. Can you confirm that they are the ones making the calls? I wish I could help you, but I don't know for sure if it was them or not. However, I do know that they are really pissed off that your boys haven't been taken away from you. I did overhear that they would be taking matters into their own hands tonight. I don't know what that means, but if I were you, I would keep an eye out for them. And if you need anything, just let me know. Thank you for the heads up, Derek. I appreciate it. Knowing my in-laws, there was no telling what they might do, and so I grabbed a baseball bat and kept it in my bedroom just in case. Sure enough, that night, I woke up to the sound of footsteps downstairs. As quietly as I could, I grabbed my bat and crept to my son's room and saw that they were asleep in their beds. As soon as I saw that they were safe, I knew who had probably made the noise, and I then crept downstairs and found my in-laws skulking around. Quiet as a mouse, I snuck up behind them and hit them both as hard as I could in the knees, disabling them from being able to run away, and then called the police and reported them. Within minutes, the police came and threw the pair into the back of their squad car and hauled them off to jail. After their interrogation at the police station, I learned they had come to attack and kill me and kidnap my sons. They figured that they could eventually manipulate my sons into giving them their inheritance, and that once they had them, that with me being dead, that the rest of my wife and my belongings would go to our sons and therefore to them. It was so absurd and so stupid that they actually thought that the plan would work. The judge hearing their case was disgusted by their actions, and combined with the fact that the police had proven that they did indeed make the false allegations about my abusing my sons, the judge had no choice but to throw the book at them and sentence them to 20 years in prison each. Part of me felt bad that my sons would have to live with the knowledge that their own grandparents had tried to kill their father and kidnap them, but they deserved to know the truth, no matter how unpleasant it was. Between the loss of their mother and their grandparents' evil and terrible acts, we all needed years of therapy. But I'm happy to say that it has proven to be a blessing for us, as our relationship has never been stronger. And seeing them now, as both of them are nearing the end of their college careers, I can happily say that I am extremely proud of the men that they are becoming, and I know that my wife would be too. So, there you have it. Again, I'm usually a very forgiving man, but after what my in-laws tried to pull, surely you agree that I did the right thing. What do you think? I tried to defend myself by bringing up my hands and arms to block her attacks, but she just kept coming at me until I punched her in the stomach. She was much smaller, and the blow from my fist made her double over in pain. Before I knew what had happened, she ran and told my father that I had attacked her without a reason, and when I tried to plead my case and say that she attacked me first. My father wouldn't believe me. Instead, he just demanded that I leave right away. Hi there, my name is Michael, and I've been placed in a really uncomfortable and terrible situation. It all started when I was 12. My parents were wonderful together. I honestly looked up to them as what a loving and caring couple should be, and I had hoped that someday that I would also be able to find someone that made me feel as special as they made each other feel. Both of them were incredibly romantic and did their best to make the other one feel loved and needed. So when my mother became ill with an incurable disease, my father and I were devastated. She went from being healthy to being on her deathbed within weeks, and there was nothing that we could do about it. The day that she died, my father and I spent a solid 24 hours crying. We only stopped because we passed out from exhaustion. After the funeral, my father and I tried our best to get back into a normal routine, but it was so hard not having my mom around. Things just felt like they were missing something vitally important. The years passed and my father and I healed, although we never truly forgot her. I had honestly thought that my father would have stayed single for the rest of his life, but I would have thought wrong. Not long after my 18th birthday, my father brought home a woman that was nearly half his age. My father had had me when he was only 22, and this woman that he brought home was 24. He introduced her to me as his girlfriend, and that her name was Carrie. It felt awkward that my father was dating someone that was barely older than me, but I didn't really see where it was my place to complain. So long as he was happy, then I would just have to stomach it. Besides, I had thought that Carrie would get tired of dating someone so much older, but I had suspected wrong. Months went by, and they were still dating, and what was worse, my father had invited her to move into our house. The day that she did, she began redecorating the house, and even started removing photos from the walls and furniture, including ones of my mom. Hey, you can't just take those photos down.
Hey, this is my house now too, and I don't want to see photos of your dead mother. I don't need reminders that I wasn't his first wife. After all, I have you here to remind me of that.
How dare you? There is no way that my father will stand for this. Sadly though, Carrie talked to my father first, and had spun the story that I was being rude, and that I hated that she was moving in. Sadly, my father believed her, and he asked me to try to be more nice to Carrie, since she would now be living with us, and if we wanted a happy home, then we needed to get along. When I tried to bring up the fact that she had taken down the photos of my mother, my father got rather absent-minded, and just said that maybe it was time that we did take them down. After all, she would have wanted us to move on with our lives, and no matter whether we had photos of her on the walls or not, we would never forget her. I wanted to believe what he was saying, but it sounded like a very lame excuse. Again, I just wanted him to be happy, plus I was planning to go away to college within a year, and so I resigned myself to just putting up with Carrie for what I thought would be a short amount of time. But then things began to escalate. For starters, Carrie and my father got married, and not long after that, she began to boss me around.
Hey, brat, I need you to wash my car.
What car? You don't own one.
Ha, joke's on you. I got your father to buy me one, and I got it dirty. So go clean it.
No. Why would I do that? I'm not your servant.
You'll do it, or I'll kick your ass.
She then attacked me and began to punch me in the face and stomach. I tried to defend myself by bringing up my hands and arms to block her attacks, but she just kept coming at me until I punched her in the stomach. She was much smaller, and the blow from my fist made her double over in pain. Before I knew what had happened, she ran and told my father that I had attacked her without a reason, and when I tried to plead my case and say that she attacked me first. My father wouldn't believe me. Instead, he just demanded that I leave right away. Even though I knew that I was in the right and that I hadn't done anything wrong, I couldn't persuade him to see the truth. Instead, I had to pack up my things and just leave. It was less than ideal, but it was either that or my father insisted that he would call the police, and that was something that I really didn't want to get involved with. And so I left and used what little money I had saved up working part-time to find myself a place to live. Unfortunately, it was a very small apartment in a very bad neighborhood, but it was all I could afford. It took some time, and I had to take out loans, but I did manage to still go to college. And after 4 years of studying extremely hard and working 3 part-time jobs at the same time, I graduated and was able to find an entry-level job at a prestigious law firm. It didn't pay much better than my part-time jobs, but it was a start, and I was grateful for it. A couple years passed, and I moved up in the firm and started making some pretty good money. So much so that I was able to buy myself a modest house in a much nicer neighborhood and was even able to get myself a car too. And another few years passed and I once again moved up in the company and was able to buy myself a really large house along with a luxury car. I was rather proud of myself, and unfortunately the only thing that could make it better was to know that my father was proud at how far I had come. But it had been many years since we had spoken, and I wasn't sure if he was still upset with me or not. One day though, I heard a knock on my front door and went to answer it, and was beyond surprised to see Carrie of all people standing there.
Hi, Michael. I know that it's been a long time. Can I come in?
I honestly didn't really want to let her in, of course, but I was hopeful that maybe she had grown over the years and that maybe she had come to apologize for driving a wedge between my father and I. Okay, I suppose.
So I heard that you had done quite well for yourself, and by the looks of it, you really have.
Yeah, it's taken a long time, but I'm doing well.
That's good. Sorry to ask, but can I use your washroom?
Annoyed, I showed her to my washroom, which was connected to my bedroom. As I showed her the way, she kept admiring my large house and all the things that I had amassed over the years. Once she was in the bathroom, I left her to go back to the living room to wait for her. 20 minutes passed when I finally got impatient and went to check on what was taking so long, and as I entered my bedroom, I found her naked on my bed. What the hell are you doing?
Oh, come on. I know that you've had a thing for me for years, and I'll be honest. Your father isn't really doing it for me anymore, so when I heard that you had become rich, I thought that I would come and pay you a visit. I can do all the things that used to make your father happy.
I was disgusted, and without thinking, I started recording our conversation using my cell phone that was hidden in my pocket. So you would leave my father for me? Just like that?
Well, of course I would. He's old and frail, and you're young and full of life. I'd much rather have a man like you.
Is that so? But why? Isn't my father doing okay for himself?
Well, he doesn't make the kind of money that you do, so I would much rather be with you.
With a big smile on my face, I pulled out my phone and showed her that I had been recording our conversation the entire time. The look of fear that spread across her face once she realized what I had been doing was priceless. Before she could say another word, I sent a copy of the recording to my father. In a flash, she ran past me and out of my house, and hadn't even bothered to get dressed. That night, I slept like a log, knowing that I had finally gotten a little bit of revenge against Carrie, and in the morning, I was greeted by a reply message from my father that read, "Can we talk?" My heart skipped a beat, and I wanted to think that maybe this meant something good, but after what had happened with Carrie the night before, I wasn't so sure that I should get my hopes up. I replied that I would be on my way over. When I arrived, my father met me at the front door and hugged me for a full 10 minutes. Neither of us spoke, and just enjoyed the hug after being apart for so many years. It felt incredible, but only half as good as what my father said next.
Oh, Michael, I was such a fool for believing Carrie. Can you ever find it in your heart to forgive me?
It's going to be hard, but I think with time that I can, yes.
That's more than I deserve, and I understand. I'm really proud at the man that you've become in spite of not having any help from an old fool like me.
Thanks, Dad. You taught me well, and I used the lessons from you to succeed. You know this is all well and good, but what about when Carrie comes home? The second I mentioned her name, my father began laughing hysterically. As it turned out, she had ran out straight to her car and had driven out of my driveway so fast that she hadn't paid attention to traffic and had backed out and into a cop car and then drove off in a panic. The cop pursued her for over 10 minutes until she finally noticed him and pulled over. After the cop looked in the window and saw that she was naked, he arrested her on the spot and she spent the night in jail. Once he had told me the whole story, I asked him how he had found out all of this, and he told me that Carrie had told him. She had used her one phone call to call him and told him everything. So does that mean that you bailed her out?
Of course not. I had suspected that she had been cheating on me for years. but I could never prove it. A part of our prenuptial agreement stated that if either of us cheated, that the other would get nothing in the divorce settlement. And since you sent me proof, well, I can finally divorce her without the fear of her taking all my money in alimony.
And he was right. A few months later, my father successfully divorced Carrie, and the judge honored the prenuptial agreement, and Carrie got nothing. My father got the house, the car, and was able to keep his retirement savings as well, which left Carrie penniless and homeless. In the months and years that followed, my father and I started spending a lot more time together in an attempt to make up for lost time. And I'm happy to say that we are once again very close and talk to each other almost every day. As for Carrie, well, she ended up going to prison for a few years for her little joyride where she evaded the police. After she got out, she really didn't have any good prospects, and as far as I know, she ended up living on the streets. I did feel bad for her, but only just a little. After all, she had stolen the most precious thing in the world from me: time with my father.
Finally, we caught you red-handed.
You won't be stealing another package from us again, you hoodlum.
Before I could say a word, Megan's father pulled out a taser gun and shot me with it, causing me to fall to the ground as he electrocuted me. As I lay on the ground, writhing in pain, Megan's mother ran over and began to kick me as she hurled insults at me. Hi there, my name is Jacob, and I've met some of the nicest people in the world in my life, but sadly, the story I'm about to tell you does not include such people. Nope, actually, if anything, these are exactly the kind of people that you should do your best to avoid. You see, I started dating Megan about a year ago. We had met on a famous app where you swipe right on someone if you like them. Well, we matched and started talking, and after a few weeks of getting to know each other, we met for drinks one night and we both felt sparks fly. We started seeing each other exclusively, and before long, we even started talking about moving in together and possibly even meeting each other's parents. This part worried me though. As a black man, I've dated more than a few white women, and not all of them, but some parents aren't exactly progressive, and once they see me, they make it known that they don't approve. Megan assured me that this wouldn't be the case with her parents.
Trust me, babe. My parents are going to love you just as much as I do.
Are you sure? Because not all white parents approve of their daughter dating a black man. Things could get really uncomfortable really quickly.
Yes, I'm sure. My parents are really nice.
Have you dated black men before?
No, but I just know that they'll be okay with it.
I had no reason to doubt that she was correct, and so we set up a day where we would drive out to their house in the suburbs to visit them at their home. The whole drive out there, I had butterflies in my stomach, and I felt very nervous. I would have felt much more relaxed if we had agreed to meet them at a restaurant, but Megan had insisted that we go and visit them at their home. As we pulled up to the house, I was amazed at how massive it was. I had known that Megan came from money, but I hadn't realized just how wealthy she was until I was standing there looking at the mansion that she had grown up in. After we got out of the car, Megan's phone rang.
It's work. I need to take this, but why don't you go on ahead and I'll catch up in like 2 minutes?
Are you sure? I don't mind waiting.
No, go on ahead. I'll only be a minute.
I knew that I should have waited for her, but instead I listened and I walked up to the front door. Above it was a security camera, and I could feel it staring at me. Slowly I reached out and was about to knock when I noticed that there was a parcel on the doorstep, which I almost stepped on. Stepping around it, I reached up to knock when the door suddenly swung open, and 2 very angry older people rushed out to confront me.
Finally, we caught you red-handed.
You won't be stealing another package from us again, you hoodlum.
Before I could say a word, Megan's father pulled out a taser gun and shot me with it, causing me to fall to the ground as he electrocuted me. As I lay on the ground, writhing in pain, Megan's mother ran over and began to kick me as she hurled insults at me.
We'll make you pay for stealing our mail. You people are never satisfied with stealing once. You had to come back and keep doing it over and over again. You people are so greedy.
I couldn't believe it. Megan's parents were crazy and they were racist on top of that. Thankfully, Megan ran up and stopped them from continuing to attack me and pulled me to my feet, but I was in a lot of pain, and I could feel that Megan's mother had broken a few of my ribs when she was kicking me.
What are you doing? This is Jacob. My boyfriend.
Why are you dating the thief that keeps stealing from us?
He's not a thief, and he has never stolen from you. He lives in the city, Dad. Why would he drive out here to come and steal from you?
Because that's all his people know how to do. Besides, we have him on tape stealing from us.
Oh, you do? Well, prove it.
I really didn't want to go into their home, but Megan dragged me inside, and her parents showed us a few recordings of some random black men that had been stealing packages off of their porches. I couldn't believe it, though. None of the men on the tape looked anything like me, other than their skin color. Lastly, they showed the tape where both of her parents attacked me. You see, I wasn't doing anything, and those other men looked nothing like me. You attacked me for no reason.
I don't know, Jacob. I didn't want to believe them, but it really does look like you on all of those tapes.
I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Not only were her parents crazy, but Megan was as well. The only thing I had in common with those other men was my skin color, but these three saw us as all the same man. Enraged, I snatched the tape that showed them attacking me and left as quickly as my battered body would allow me to move. Thankfully, they didn't stop me though, and once outside, I called a cab and asked that they bring me to the hospital, after dozens of hours of waiting and being x-rayed. Not only did I have broken ribs, but I had fractures on the bones in both of my arms, along with third-degree burns where Megan's father had shot me with the taser. By the time they released me, I was covered in bandages and had a medical bill of over $15,000. I was so angry that I could barely see straight. However, I'm usually a very forgiving person, and so I wanted to give Megan and her parents a chance of making things right, and so I called her. Hey, I just got out of the hospital. Those crazy racist parents of yours broke several bones and nearly killed me.
Well, can you honestly blame them?
Are you being serious? They attacked me unprovoked.
We all watched the same tapes, Jacob, and for you to take the last one really shows your guilt.
Yes, we all watched the same tapes, but apparently I'm the only one that can tell that it was different men in each one.
Jacob, it was you in each one. Listen, I've managed to calm my parents down, and they promise that if you apologize and return all the things that you've stolen, that they won't press charges.
I didn't need to hear another word from her. It was painfully obvious that she was just as racist and crazy as her parents. Like I said, I'm usually a very forgiving person, but these people had pushed me over my limit, and so I called the police and charged Megan's parents with assault, and I gave the police a copy of the tape as evidence. Of course, her parents tried to show the police the other tapes, but luckily the cops watched them and knew instantly that it wasn't me on the other recordings. Unfortunately, this was only their first offense, and since they were so wealthy, Megan's parents only were fined and forced to do community service. Hearing this made me even madder, and so I decided that I needed to use the nuclear option on them. I posted the video of them attacking me all over every social media website that I could with the title, "Crazy Karens Attack Innocent Black Man." The video went viral, and both of Megan's parents became infamous overnight. They became pariahs in their social groups and were even kicked out of the prestigious country club that they belonged to. If they weren't retired, I have no doubt that they would have lost their jobs as well. No matter where they went, people recognized them and harassed them for what they had done. But all that internet infamy wasn't enough. After all, it wouldn't pay my medical bills. But luckily, since I was the one that posted the video, dozens of lawyers sought me out as they wanted to represent me in a personal injury lawsuit against them. Many of them even agreed to represent me for free because they knew that they would get a lot of exposure for representing me in such a well-known and popular case. I chose one that seemed like he knew what he was doing, and we served them and brought them to court. With the tape that I had, it was easy to show that they had attacked me without reason, and along with the x-rays and medical records that I had, it was an open and shut case. After we had presented all of our evidence, the judge took only 30 minutes to deliberate, instantly decided in my favor. He ordered Megan's parents to pay me the $25,000 for my medical bills and an additional $50,000 for the pain and suffering I had endured along with the long-term care that I would need to ensure that my injuries would heal properly. I honestly was hoping for more, but that $75,000 would really help me out so much that I just counted my blessings that I hadn't been hurt worse, and that after all my medical bills were covered, that there would be a lot of money left over to help me get something that I had always wanted: a house. A month after I received my money, I had put a large down payment on a lovely little house and was getting ready to move in when I got a call from Megan.
Hey, don't you think that my parents have suffered enough?
What am I doing that is making them suffer?
You posted that video online. Take it down. People won't stop saying mean things to them and to me because of it.
After what they did to me, and after the way you treated me and defended them. Honestly, it's justified. I hope that video keeps being viral for years to come. Megan, for crying out loud. They attacked and seriously hurt me for no reason. That isn't something a sane person does. They deserve what is happening to them. And with that, I hung up on her and blocked her number. I had no interest in hearing from her or her crazy parents ever again. In fact, not more than 6 months later, they did it again to a different man, and since it was their second offense, they were placed in jail for 5 years. It was still a disgustingly short sentence for such a vile crime, but at least it was something. Megan, on the other hand, ended up changing her name and moving to another city. I'm not sure what happened to her after that, but I do know that her parents were hemorrhaging money because of all the legal fees that they were being forced to spend, and since they were the main source of money for her. I doubt Megan is doing all that well financially speaking. As for me, well, I did manage to heal up well, and I'm loving my new house, although I haven't started dating again. I will one day, but for now, I'm just enjoying being a homeowner, although I would have preferred I got the money for it literally any other way. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to the channel.